to Paranormal Square, where we share real-life ghost experiences from around the world. This following story that you're about to hear, I'm about to share with you, comes from the Ghost Radio official channel in Thailand. And it came from one of their subscribers, and this subscriber called in during one of their podcasts. Now, this person who called in had never had any ghost experiences and really didn't believe in ghost experiences until this happened. So let me give you a little bit of background on the person who called in. The person who called in was a guy named Gun. And Gun was the director of dietitians for a hospital in Bangkok and had worked in the hospital for a number of years. He and his staff were the ones responsible for providing meals to every patient that was in the hospital. So Gun had been surrounded by patients living and dying for a long, long time because he'd been at the hospital for a long time, but he had never had any experiences with any ghosts or spirits or anything like that. But nobody could have prepared Gun or anybody else for COVID. And when the COVID outbreak happened in Thailand, Thailand did what most other countries did, and they locked down their borders and instituted isolation policies and such. And the complication problem that happened in Thailand was that the vaccines were not available. They were very scarce in Thailand. So the cases of number of people getting sick and spreading the disease kept rising and rising. And Gun's responsibility and his team's responsibility was to feed everybody 3 meals a day that were in the hospital. And quickly the hospital became overrun with patients. So the hospital ended up taking on hotels or universities and temples and condo buildings, anywhere they could contract to house the sick people. Now, Gun's responsibility again continued to be to try and feed all these people. And what a major task that was, to try and coordinate to cook 3 meals a day and get them delivered to people that are not just in the hospital now, but in every other facility the hospital is utilizing to take care of the sick patients. Well, there weren't enough people to drive around. There were not enough people to deliver the food. And Gun himself had to participate in the program. Even though he's the person that set the whole program up and he wanted to participate, it became a necessity because there weren't enough drivers. There weren't enough people to get around. So Gun had decided to take on a condo building where it had 6 patients on one floor in 6 different units. And Gun decided to take on this responsibility for 14 days. He agreed to do this. And it would be his responsibility, on top of prepping the food and getting everything ready with his staff, he would deliver these 3 meals a day to these 6 units for 14 days. So, and again, up until this experience, Gun had never had any experience with ghosts or never seen anything with ghosts. So on his very first day of delivery, things started off. They had developed a system where the person delivering the food would hang the food on the door, and then you'd knock on the door. The patient would reach out and grab the food and then close the door, and then the person delivering the food would then call into the unit to make sure the patient was okay, make sure the food was okay, and see if they needed anything else. So for units 1 through 4 that day, everything proceeded just as they had done, as they had designed to do. The food was hung on the door, the person would reach out, grab the food, and then Gun would call in and check on the patient. That wasn't until he got to unit number 5. And again, 1 through 4 there were no issues. But when he got to unit number 5, he hung the food on the door, knocked on the door, and instead of the patient just reaching out and grabbing the food, the guy came barging out of the room and wanted to talk with Gun. And Gun's trying to convince this guy to go back into his room to follow procedure, follow protocol. He was in isolation, and the guy kept saying, "How long have I been here? I'm all better. I don't need to be here." But Gun was actually able to convince the guy to go back into his unit and close the door. And then he had a long conversation with the guy, and Gun told him that he just needed to hang in there. He was only going to be there for another 13 days, 14 days, and just to hang in there. And then Gun went on to unit number 6, knocked on the door, put the food on the handle, knocked on the door, and backed away. And then he saw a pair of hands reach out, grab the food, and the door closed, and then Gunn called into unit number 6. Now, unit number 6 last name was Warapong. And so when he called the number, the person answered, and Gunn explained who he was and that he was going to be delivering food, and he'd be the person taking care of him for the next couple of weeks. And Warapong was really sounded confused and didn't quite understand what Gunn was talking about, but he couldn't understand. And Gunn said, "I have these 6 units that I'm delivering on this floor." And Warapong was even more confused, not quite understanding, but and it left Gunn feeling kind of uneasy. But he because Warapong was really not clear, but didn't say anything bad either, so they just left it alone for the day. So for day 1, things proceeded that way, and all 3 meals were delivered and for the day. And it was on day number 2 that things really, really changed for Gunn. When he got to unit number 1, and this time when he called into the unit, there was an older lady that answered the phone, and she said to Gunn, "Are you delivering food to every unit on this floor?" And Gunn said, "Yeah, I have a list here, and all 6 units are everybody's active and everybody's healthy, is still here. So yeah, I am delivering to all 6 units." And the lady inside said, that doesn't make any sense to me. She said, "Somebody on this floor died, and I saw the paramedics wheel the body past my unit the other day." And Gunn said, "No. He said I double checked everything." He said, I double checked and everybody's still here. Everybody's still here. The lady said, "It's really not making any sense to me," but she hung up. And so Gunn's now very puzzled. He doesn't know what quite to make of things, and he goes to unit number 2. And this time when he calls into unit number 2, the guy in number 2 said, "Hey, how's the person doing that's sick? Did somebody die, or are they just sick?" And Gunn's now really, his head's starting to spin because he doesn't quite understand what's going on here now. So he explains to the guy, no, all the units are filled, and the list is still good, and everybody's still here. And the guy sounded rather relieved. He said he was really concerned that somebody had died. He saw the paramedics on the floor the other day, and he really thought somebody had died, but he was happy to hear and relieved to hear that nobody had died. So, and then he hung up. Well, units 3 and 4, Gunn's confused, of course, now. He doesn't know. There's 2 people saying that something's not right. Somebody died on the floor. And but he continues on. He gets to unit 3 and 4, and he talks to both of those people, and things proceeded normal on those units. And he gets to unit 5, and things proceeded as normal could be. The food was hung on the door, and he knocked on the door. The guy reached out, grabbed the food, and then closed the door. But this time when Gunn called into the unit, the guy followed procedure, and Gunn called into the unit and asked how the guy was doing. And he said, "Do me a favor, can you check on the person in unit 6? There's she was moaning and screaming all night long. It sounded like she was in a lot of pain." And Gunn assured the guy that they would check on it, what have you, and make sure things were okay. And then he proceeded on to door number 6, unit number 6. And unit number 6, and did the same procedure, and he saw a pair of hands reach out and grab the food and take it back in. So that was that was for breakfast on day number 2. And when he went back for lunch again, units 1, 2, 3, and 4 proceeded with no problems, but Gunn was still troubled by the fact, and the person in number 5 asked about the person in number 6, and could you do something to help her? And so Gunn called back to the unit and said, "Something's not right here. I'm not quite understanding what's going on here. Can you check this list again and make sure things are okay?" Now, when he goes to call the person in unit number 6, before he even has a chance to call, the person in unit number 6 is calling him. And now, Gunn has not delivered the food to unit 6 yet. He's still dealing with unit number 5. And he goes and unit number 6 is calling. He wanted to thank Gunn for the food, that somebody had dropped off the food, and Gunn's really kind of confused now. He's more confused than ever. And he can't figure out why the Warapong's calling him and telling him he already got the food when he hasn't delivered the food yet. So he hasn't even delivered the food yet. So he's even more confused. But Warpong said that, you told me you would call me after you delivered food, and you delivered the food, and nobody's called. So that's why I figured I'd call you first, to let you know that I had gotten the food. And Warpong's really, really confused now. He calls the hospital back. All right. Now this is the end of day number 2, and he's calling the hospital back, and he says, something's really, really wrong here. I'm not quite understanding why I'm getting. Can you check the list one more time? Make sure. Well, here they check the list again, and they find out there's been a mistake. That the person in unit number 6 had actually died 2 days prior. And that the Warpong was the same name as the person in unit number 6, but this Warpong that he had been calling lived in a house and was isolated in a house in a neighborhood, not a condo unit where Gunn was delivering. With that, he's listening, he's talking, he's outside unit number 6, and with that, the door to number 6 starts to open, and Gunn took off running. He just couldn't, he was like, somebody's dead, it's a spirit, it's a ghost. Well, needless to say, he got back to the hospital, and he needed to find somebody to take this route over, but he couldn't tell anybody what he had experienced because he was afraid they'd laugh at him, they wouldn't believe him, and so he couldn't tell anybody, but he couldn't find anybody to take the route over. He had 12 more days to do this, to deliver this. And now he's already running into spirits, and he knows that somebody, unit number 6, the person has been dead for a couple of days. There's nobody living in the unit, but whose hands are reaching out and grabbing the food out off the door? And who's the one that's making the sound and opening the door? But he can't find anybody to take the route. He can't, and he can't let these people down. So he decides he's going to do the best he can. He's going to try, but he's going to stay away from unit number 6. He's scared to death of unit number 6. So he goes back, and for the next 10 days, he delivers to units 1 through 5 and does everything he can to stay away from unit number 6. Now, during this whole time, the person in unit number 5, every time that Gunn would deliver food, would say to Gunn, "Can you please help the person in unit number 6? They were up crying all night long and screaming. They sound like they really need help." Now, Gunn didn't have the heart, or he just couldn't bring himself to tell the guy in unit 5 that there was nobody living in unit 6, that the person had passed away. But the other part of it is that every time that Gunn passed the unit, he would hear something like a woman walking around in high-heeled shoes, and he would hear jingling of keys, or somebody. It sounded like somebody trying to open the unit door. So Gunn was scared to death of this until day number 10. He calls back. He goes through, and he's on his very last round of the third meal of the day, and he drops off food for number 5, unit number 5. And when he calls in this time, there's a very definite, very different tone in the guy's voice, and the guy seems rather happy. And so Gunn asked the guy, he said, "Well, what's the difference? I mean, what you sound much better." And the guy said, I am really feeling much better." He said, "The woman from unit number 6, he said, we ended up standing out in the balcony, patios, balconies all night long talking, and she's a very nice lady. And she's telling me that we should, actually probably be neighbors for the rest of our lives. I should buy the unit I'm living in now." And Gunn's freaked out. He needs to tell this guy the truth, because this guy now he's out on the balcony and talking to this person in unit 6, and there's actually nobody living in unit 6. So Gunn's about to explain this to the guy, and all of a sudden the door for unit number 6 starts to open. And Gunn, oh my God, the hair was standing up on his arms. His hair was standing up straight. He took off running. But he decided he really needed to tell the guy in unit 5 the truth. So when he got back to the hospital, he decided he really needed to call the guy. And he called the guy. And the guy answered the phone. And Gunn said, "I really need to be honest with you." And the guy said, I've got to tell you this. The truth is that the person in unit number 6 died like 2 weeks, 12 days ago, and you've been talking to a spirit all this time. And the guy just, on unit 5, freaked out and started screaming at Gunn. He said, "I can't believe you would say something like that. She's such a nice lady. She's actually standing right here with me in my unit right now." This is not the end of the story. There is another part to this about unit number 5. We look forward to sharing with that story with you soon. We also look forward to hearing from you. If you have real life experiences real life adventures, we'd like to know about it. We'd like to be able to share with you. So please contact us.